Please welcome Jordan Wong.
I am so grateful to see so many faces on this really rainy day. I was talking to my girlfriend. And I was like, "Oh man, I wonder if the rain is gonna keep people from coming. You think that's gonna happen?" She looks at me. She's like, "Oh yeah." She's like, "No, yeah, no. There's no one's gonna come." I'm like, "Oh great." Um, all right. Make sure this works. All right, it does. Technology is working. That's always a good sign. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you all for being here, for letting me share, a little bit about myself and my work. Thank you to John, who, without this would not be happening. It's funny, this is kind of like deja vu for me because I've actually spoken in this spot, like back in July, for an AAF Buffalo event. So hello to familiar faces that were there for that event. But I'm excited to be back and share something a little bit different for those that had seen my previous talk, and then this will be, of course, very new for those that are here for the first time. So again, my name is Jordan Wong. I'm an artist, full-time, and I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio, but I'm originally from Pittsburgh, lived in Pittsburgh for 20 years before coming out to Cleveland. And everything started when I was, this little guy. Ever since I was young, I was just in love with, imaginary stories and heroic journeys, and could not stop consuming, anime, manga, video games, comic books, graphic novels, all those whimsical, fantastical things. And I'm so lucky and so fortunate to say that as an adult, as my profession, I get to share the things that I loved as a kid, still love as as a 32-year-old. My dad always teases me. He's like, "Do you still watch cartoons?" I'm like, "Yeah." But I get to make a living out of it. I get to actually share some of those visuals and images that I loved as a kid in some pretty cool places. A lot of different installations in throughout Cleveland, downtown. I have several works in Cleveland's Asiatown, as well as right outside of Cleveland. There's another city called Lakewood, a work there, and now, 2020? No, 2021. 2021, I had my first art museum exhibition at the Akron Art Museum. Akron is another city outside of Cleveland, and I was one of the first artists entrusted with their garden space and doing like a full installation. So there were 5 works, 2 which were rather large. Here's an example for scale. It's kind of cool when a museum lets you put your work on the side of their actual museum. But as well as like some small moments throughout their garden space. You might recognize this one if you head upstairs to the exhibition. My work has been featured in different places. I was listed on Graphic Design USA's People to Watch list. Cleveland Magazine included me in their most interesting people list for 2020. I've been featured in different, local magazines, articles, video features, the news, more videos and articles, as well as The Great Discontent, which is a nationally distributed magazine that interviews some really incredible creative talent. And it was again just a pleasure and an honor to be featured in this magazine. For those that are graphic designers, this magazine is interviewed like design legends such as like Debbie Millman, Aaron Draplin, James Victori, I mean, and like really big names. So again, to be part of this was a huge honor. And again, to to have these opportunities to share what it is that I'm doing. This was actually part of a news segment in Cleveland for my most recent public artwork, which is this giant, like this thing is 7 feet tall by 5 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep. It's made of stainless steel with a vinyl graphic exterior, and the art is inspired by the memory of when I was a kid. My father would come back from Japan for business, and he would bring me home these robot toy model kits, and I was just blown away by the box art on this stuff. And I wanted to share, you know, those visuals, those memories with the families, and especially the kids in Asia Town. But this is the cool part about this piece. The backside has a book cabinet, and so the whole thing functions as a little library. And then, Bill, do you mind playing that video for everyone? Having some audio issues. Bear with us, everyone. There we go.
We are here at Asia Town Center in Cleveland's Asia Town, welcoming in this new public artwork by Jordan Wong called Super Mega Wonder 1999.
It turned into about 1,400 pound behemoth. We got it wrapped, we had a door put on it, a cabinet put in it, and we tried to make it gutter tight so folks can live inside there.
It's perfect for the neighborhood. You know, hopefully we'll get more people reading. We know that in West Island the reading level is kind of low, and we're trying to do what we can to boost that.
This project is a burst of color and excitement and culture that celebrates a piece of our childhood, and is beautiful to celebrate creativity and release.
Thanks, Bill. So the piece is installed for indefinitely, and it's cool. I sometimes go back just to check on it and make sure like it's still in great condition. And every time I go back, there's always new books that are added and that are being swapped out, which is great to like see it being used and see kids have access to the stories that I essentially fell in love with and inspired me to become an artist. A couple more things. I just finished up my term as the president for AIGA Cleveland. AIGA is a national organization for graphic design, and that's actually part of my beginnings as a career professional. Come from a design background, and much of my work when I first started going independent was crafting logos, identities for businesses, institutions, nonprofits, as well as other entrepreneurs. And sometimes I would actually combine the two disciplines, of the art and illustration, with the design practice to do whole campaigns for events. Fun fact, I'm a tango dancer. I bet you guys weren't expecting that one. And I've been dancing for, about 7 years now. So to sum it all up, I draw, I design, and I dance. So the works that are on display in the exhibition upstairs, they're a little bit different than probably what you just saw, and that there's more opportunities for me to show the black and white things that I've done in the past, and they're of course not as large as some of the public works. And before I get to kind of talking more about them, I thought it would be cool to share some of the evolutions, and especially kind of things that I'm now starting to connect as an adult, to when I was a kid. Because as a kid, I grew up in a neighborhood where no one looked like me. I grew up also not speaking the language that my family speaks. Whenever you're small and all the kids around you are speaking, one language, you want to speak the language that everyone else is speaking. So even though my parents tried to teach me, Chinese, it didn't stick. It didn't stick. So, spending all my time in school or with kids in the neighborhood, I of course felt like, man, I'm different from everyone, right? But then I would go to family dinners or be in these situations where everyone looks like me, but I can't, there's a language barrier. So then I didn't feel kind of, strongly identified or connected, to even these family moments. So I remember as a kid often feeling like existing in this third space, like just kind of being, like not sharing like where I belong and whatnot. And I think that is actually what provided the opportunity for me to fall in love with art, to really dive into these worlds and stories, having this whole space to yourself, or trying to connect to things. That's what allowed me to I think to do that, to actually have time to myself to make drawings and celebrate these heroes or creatures, or monsters, or kaiju like Godzilla, and actually explore that. And I look back now at some of these old drawings and thinking about it as an adult, and I don't know, maybe like psychoanalyzing myself a little bit. It's like, I wonder if I was trying to kind of reimagine or fantasize about myself in these like worlds, and attach myself to these ideas of like becoming stronger, becoming more brilliant, becoming, I don't know, more celebrated, more heroic, right? And even looking at this work, which is from high school. So this is actually a drawing of me and a very good friend of mine who I've known since high school. And this friend was very all-American. We were very close. And he loved like the same stuff that I love. But he was on the football team, he was white, blonde hair, blue eyes, always really, really confident. And me at that time, I think I was still on the shyer end of things and trying to, figure out myself. But I look at this drawing and I remember drawing this, but I like looking at it now, it's like, oh man, like I see so much of it like come out, like of me like really, trying to figure out like who am I, where do I belong, and all these sorts of things. In contrast to my friend who, God, I don't think he was that buff, like or maybe he was, but I don't know why I drew him like that, right? Like kind of idealized. God, look at my arms compared to his. So I wonder now, like, if the art making was also a way for, like, a subconscious way for me to figure out these things or try to carve out like who am I, because I didn't have groups that I could like strongly identify with. It was mainly through these stories and other art forms that I loved. So skipping forward, I did get better at drawing, thank God. And the work that I do now versus the work that I was doing probably like around the end of college, in my 20s, it was very different than what you may see in the gallery or in the previous slides. Even some of the things that I was exploring, really really young. At this age, my work was very much focused on detailed line drawings and playing with humor and kind of, I don't know, sharing these weird, quirky moments. For those who can't see the speech bubble, it says it's time to party. And I just thought this stuff was really funny as a 20-year-old. This is also the time that there was like kind of like this boom in cartoons. For those who are familiar with the show Adventure Time, like I remember seeing the pilot episode of that in high school, and then there was this huge announcement that Cartoon Network was going to do a full series, and the humor in Adventure Time is so nonsensical and whimsical, and it seemed like there was a large trend of that kind of just bizarre, randomness in those kind of series at the time, and me and my friends loved all of that. So, a lot of that kind of came through these drawings, but there's this strong desire to like draw, like be really good at drawing, and that meant like drawings being really really detailed and still like in the lines of like the things I love as far as like these fantastical or imaginative scenarios. But I eventually got to a point where I felt stuck in my drawing and in my art practice, to the point where I would like open a sketchbook and I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to draw, and I was kind of trapped by this idea of like I have to make a good drawing, even if it's in a sketchbook, right? And I was talking to a good friend of mine who is in Pittsburgh. We actually went to school together. Joe is a fantastic illustrator. I encourage you all to look him up. He's based out of Pittsburgh. But we were chatting one day, and he suggested to me this exercise to try and loosen up and break free out of those limitations that I was kind of coming up with myself, or more like constraints. Before I talk about that, I just want to point out my buddy Greg here in the corner. I don't know if anyone caught him. It's another, great friend from college. So Joe recommended this exercise called automatic drawing. And automatic drawing, for those unfamiliar, is essentially drawing from the subconscious, these split-second decisions, and it's all about mark making. It's all about keeping the hand moving and just letting yourself make lines and shapes. Has anyone doodled here? just drawn randomly. Yeah, you all have done automatic drawing. Automatic drawing is just a fancy word for doodling, essentially, right? So this is the very first one that I ever did, and as you can see, extremely, gestural and kind of, just a lot of play. And I started exploring this, to break out of this idea of like, oh, I have to draw a thing, or it has to look awesome, right? It has to be good. And the more I did these exercises, I noticed that they were starting to kind of like evolve into something that was a little bit cleaner, but still had no intention of representing something or pressure of making a good drawing. And I don't know because it's kind of small, but there's actually some words actually hidden throughout the lines and shapes. So I was kind of playing with like these like subconscious like word play as well. I would do an area and then like a word would pop in my head. I'm like, oh, I'll just like write it down. This is whenever I started kind of incorporating these arrows and directional motifs as well in the work. Kept at it, and then this eventually evolved into something that I was starting to show, not just only in art, but also in some of the client work that I was doing at the time. And I found a way to kind of combine, representational drawing with the automatic drawing exercise, to which I would start with something recognizable, and that would kind of act as a template for me to kind of dance within, and really play. And this is kind of the evolution to where my work is at now, as you might be able to see upstairs. And this approach has also opened up opportunities for some pretty interesting collaborations. There's this shot's actually from the Akron Art Museum, and these three works, which are on view upstairs, are done in collaboration with another artist in Cleveland. His name is Carl Anderson. And Carl's work plays with these typographic forms. He'll take words and phrases and he'll like split them and then rearrange them to result in something kind of like codified and fun. And because I come from a design background, because my work is influenced, by that aesthetic, it kind of was a natural fit for Carl and I to kind of start, playing around with like, okay, you give me your letter forms or, these types of things, and let me see what I can, create from it. So moving, starting from this place of like, who am I, like, where do I belong, and really through my art practice, and again, this is all me kind of just thinking from this point backwards. Like at this time, I had no idea, what I was doing. I just knew I liked these characters and these stories, and I just wanted to draw them, right? But now I'm wondering, through the practice of making art, I moved from, essentially figuring out where I belong to really just enjoying the things that I enjoy, right? Being that kid who's fascinated with robots, right? And really just indulging in that sense of play. And it wasn't until maybe around like 2019 that I started using my arts practice to find more of a connection with my ethnicity and cultural background, right? Because growing up and seeing like all this different Chinese and Asian art and kind of being able to like recognize these different motifs and imagery, I wanted to explore. It's like, okay, how can I take this stuff that I've grown up with, but kind of transform it and incorporate it into my own visual language. This breaks into something kind of interesting in that, you know, this art is not necessarily me trying to make Chinese art or Asian art or Chinese American art or Asian American art, right? I think it's more than that, because there's a lot of me in these explorations and these works, and then that, you know, those automatic drawing elements are found throughout this stuff, and it's using these motifs more as starting points for the inspiration for the whole piece. So this is really one of the first works that I did to explore that, and it's evolved. It's evolved, and it's resulted in some really incredible opportunities to take those visuals, that language, and kind of share it in some cool places. And, you know, from doing this is actually my first public artwork, to then, you know, the opportunities in Asia Town, it actually allowed me to connect with those that were struggling with, you know, similar things. It allowed me to share with the Asian community in Cleveland. People would, you know, post on their Instagram of them stopping by the piece. We had a Stop Asian Hate march in Cleveland. This is the time of the Atlanta shootings, and a group actually used my, you know, the artwork that I created as a rendezvous point to actually gather, which was really incredible. And there's just something really powerful about sharing your art and having that inspire other people's art. This is a martial artist from Pittsburgh. So this is a really small world, actually. His name is Alan, and Alan's family had a restaurant years ago. They served dim sum, and my family would go to that restaurant. But I never met Alan, you know. I only knew, you know, of his family and his restaurant, and yeah, when he told me his last name, I was like, wait a minute. So it's really a small world. And again, to have this all evolve into these projects that inspire kids, you know, that like that was me, you know, 20 years ago, and to be able to essentially, I don't know, hopefully, you know, create new artists, inspire the next generation of creative professionals. It's really an honor, for sure. So you may recognize this if you go upstairs, and I want to share a little bit about this piece because it connects to a lot of this. That noodle ramen piece that you saw earlier. So I did a limited edition screen print of that work, and that was shown in Pittsburgh, and the president of OCA Pittsburgh, OCA is an organization for Asian Americans, she actually bought that work and had it in her office. And this is, again, back in 2017. So now, skip several years forward, she reaches out to me about this historical celebration that was about to take place in Pittsburgh. And it was to recognize Pittsburgh's Chinatown as a historical district, which historically it's one of the first in the country. which is really incredible. I remember I was talking to my father about it, and I was telling him about the event and like the buildings that were going to be recognized, and he's like, oh yeah, your great grandfather would take me to that building and I would play like on the second floor of that building, right? So there's a deep history, my family in Pittsburgh and this event, and she asked and commissioned me to do a commemorative work for this. So the Chinese character is Ming, which essentially means like bright. And we created 147 versions of this artwork, and they were small, die cut out of I believe it was walnut. And these were available at the actual event. She said some very kind and lovely words, made announcements like we have these available for you, the guests. Several of them were handed to city officials. And then when she made the announcement that these were available, within like 2 minutes, they were all gone. They were like all gone, 147 of them, like all gone. Yeah. So taking this work and kind of reimagining like new possibilities with it, right? Because that piece was, I think, like just like 4 inches by 4 inches, and upstairs you'll see the next incarnation of it, as well as it kind of follows a similar presence to this work, and these two works are kind of the beginning of a new direction for my practice and the things that I'm exploring, in that I'm playing with the question of like, what can I do with a drawing? What can I do with line and bring it into a physical realm, and play with things, kind of being these physical emblems that carry meaning. And to see that complement the more detailed drawings is kind of interesting. I was actually on the phone with Joe last night, and I was telling him about the die cut works, and he's like, how do you think they're received? Like, do you think this is a good direction for your work? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, because in the more detailed, large drawings, I play with that stuff anyways. Those icons, those symbols, they're hidden throughout these things. So it felt very natural to see what happens when we isolate that, and then have that also presented next, like alongside it, because there's a fascination with contrast and harmony for me as an artist. As much as I love making things dynamic and action-packed and full of lines, I'm also interested in just boldness, through shapes, type, symbols, icons, which again connects to my background as a graphic designer. And again, using all of this to kind of share the stories that only I can tell. So this work upstairs was originally shown on the backside of that giant concrete wall in the garden space in the Akron Art Museum. And the whole piece, which I think this is really, this kind of gives it away, these like first 3 panels, but the whole piece is really a metaphor for the journey of going through bigotry and being the other, and essentially like that story told as a kid who loves manga, right? And to share that story, in a way that again, connects to the things I loved as a kid. Has been it's been a really meaningful journey and experience as an artist, and even the opportunities to connect more with my culture and to see like what other things can I play out, you know, and share these themes that are really near and dear to me that connect to my family, has also been incredible. I think we were we eating somewhere? So this is a napkin with like some family names of my girlfriend's like parents. She's with us here tonight, by the way. And she was like sharing me like the history behind her mother and father's, you know, family names, and it got me thinking of my own family, and especially, you know, my great grandfather and ancestors. They worked on the railroads in this country, right? And it kind of made me think of like, you know, her showing me these characters made me think of like symbols and made me think of like the doorway signs, you know, on households or restaurants. Like there'll be like the characters, right? Usually like engraved in wood or something like that. And it kind of opened the idea of like, what would I create? Like if I had to create my own doorway sign, like what would that look like? And it resulted in this work, which this one is particularly meaningful to me, because it really connects to my family, which again, they came to this country, worked on the railroads, suffered, I can only imagine, all kinds of mistreatments and bigotry and racism, and then made their way to Pittsburgh from the West Coast, which that's in itself incredible, and worked just really labor-intensive jobs. My family owned a Chinese laundry, which I remember talking to my father. I'm like, oh yeah, they owned a laundromat, right? He's like, no, Chinese laundry is different than a laundromat. And he told me of his memories of the laundromat just being so hot and so smelly. This is the time the steel mills and workers, right? They would just drop off their laundry. He told me this visual, which he'll never be able to get out of his head, of just like a mountain of socks piled to like the ceiling, right? And it's like, oh my God. To go from that point to working in these, stinky, smelly, labor-intensive Chinese laundries, to now me being an artist. Oh my God, that's incredible. And I just think about that idea of, their perseverance is what created the opportunity for me to explore, work and a profession and ideas that, a lot of parents discourage their kids from, and a lot of people say like, how are you going to make money in this? How are you going to do this, right? So again, this theme of perseverance and finding identity, and just going forward, is all kind of captured in this work. And just thinking back, the journey of being this kid in love with this stuff, not feeling a sense of belonging to, now being this person who gets to create these things and share these moments. It's really an honor, and I'm excited to keep making more in the future. So thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Yeah, do we want to do a little Q&A, I guess? Any questions?
I kind of have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if I can articulate it very well. I'm a teacher in Buffalo Public Schools. I'm an art teacher. And I appreciate so much your sharing your journey to art making and contrasting with your family that you just explained. And I'm so happy for you and proud that you're showing your Hallwalls because it's really wonderful. I guess my question is, are you comfortable? Are you like ready to keep going? You know, how, like you, to me in your talk, you were so like, oh, I know what's going on, you know. So just, can you talk about how you see your next steps maybe, and
Yeah, absolutely.
including children, like you just mentioned at the end?
Mhm. When I think about my practice and, where I've been, where I'm at now, there's always this feeling of gratitude,
Yeah.
which I think as artists we overlook a lot, because there's so much around the myth of an artist, especially the starving part,
Yeah.
right? And like things are hard. How are you gonna make money? No one wants to buy this, right? Man, we are so lucky. We're so like if you're able to even just like survive off of your creativity. Oh my God, there's so many people that would kill to be in that position. There's so many people that would love to be where I'm standing right now. So I always try to remember that. So there's and that gratitude, and then also thinking about all this, the love and support that I'm so fortunate to have.
Is your family supportive, I presume?
I'm so lucky that they are. Yeah. Absolutely, because I know that is not the case for a lot of people's
Right.
families. I lecture at the Cleveland Institute of Art, and I remember actually this has happened a couple times now. Some of the students that come from Asian backgrounds, they'll ask me like, "How did you convince your parents,
Right.
to let you do this?" And my mom was nervous, of course. I think moms worry. But, I was really fortunate that both of them, and even my grandparents, have done nothing but support this weird obsession of drawing things and eventually that evolving into a profession. I remember my grandfather, when I would go and visit and stay with them, like they would babysit me, my grandfather would cut up sheets of computer paper into just like smaller,
Yeah.
sheets, like, I don't know, like 5x7 like sheets, and he would have a stack because he knew I loved to draw so much, and he would have a stack ready for me, with that and a sharpened pencil. And I would just be, in their kitchen just drawing things. So, to answer your question of like what's next, where do I see these things going? Oh my God, bigger and better. I just want to create more, share more, grow the practice. Build.
You be you.
Yeah. Just keep creating better and better art for sure.
I really appreciate the lecture. I saw the show Wednesday, so it gave me a much better context of all the work. So I'm really happy I came.
Thanks for coming back.
No, I congratulate you wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much.
This is kind of a random
Loretta?
question.
Let's go to the opening.
Oh, there's another
Sorry,
question.
sorry.
No,
I'm
okay.
sorry, I just was wondering, with your working with children, and the shows and books, everything that inspired you as a child, in your work and your art, what has been the most rewarding and important either story lesson or moral or ideals that you're sharing in your artwork? Or I don't know if you'll talk to us about it upstairs. Or, but yeah, I don't know. I was just seeing all those kids all lit up with joy, and that was awesome. It looked amazing. It looked like an amazing experience to inspire them. And I was just curious.
Yeah, I would say for me, play is an important part of these visuals that I'm creating, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, when you look at this stuff. So to create those kind of moments out in the world, and especially, for, the younger ones, the next generation of artists, I would say that, that has been kind of highlighted to me recently. You hear this quote of love, we're all born artists. Every kid draws, every kid's coloring and playing with paint and being goofy and weird and playing, right? And then as you get older, a lot of people stop playing. So this space and freedom to explore, to play, to indulge in the things that just excite you, that resonate with you, and to provide that opportunity and encouragement, especially for the young ones, and especially actually more so for us that have gone older, that have lost that, right? To reintroduce that, it's like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like I can just play, right? And the best art comes from that, in my opinion. That's kind of been like a big thing that I've been thinking about these days. As far as like any kind of like, what's really important, it's like just being able to play. Because being able to play, like that's what fuels the practice. That's what gets you coming back, to the chair to make those lines or play those notes or, make those movements as a dancer. I think play is such an important part, to anything really.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you all so much for being here.